What is up, my guys and ghouls? How are we doing? We are now halfway through the month of Halloween. I know that I missed last week. I was going to put up a guest episode, but it was Comic-Con weekend. I would love to get into that. I would also love to touch on why I love horror and some reasons why other people like horror. I just think that would be a little bit fun thing since I said we were going to do some more Halloween episodes and then I missed a week, but hopefully you're not too mad at me or anything. For those who are watching, I have on some Candyman merch today. Very, very happy with it. Also, what's some new things? So I have this cute little Star Wars necklace I got from Comic-Con. I got a new lightsaber at Comic-Con. And funny enough, it was a grab bag. And guess what color it was? It was red. I would show you, but that kind of defeats the point of this being like a proper podcast. So, what else has happened in this week? So last week I went to Comic-Con Thursday through Sunday. I ended up going all 4 days. I didn't anticipate to go all 4 days, but I did, and I had so much fun. I really, really needed it. Like, more than anything, I'm still a little bit behind on schoolwork, but I did have so much fun. I got to see so many old friends. I was surprised with a couple of cosplayers that I had been friends with for some time online, and they were actually there, and I didn't know that they were coming, so that was really exciting. I don't watch a lot of people's stories on Instagram, and I guess maybe I should, because maybe they would have mentioned it, but some people don't mention their, like, why they go to certain, or if they're going to certain cons and things like that for privacy reasons, safety reasons, especially for, like, females. But yeah, so that was just some exciting stuff that happened. If you don't follow Big Nelly C or Swaggy Cosplayer, or Swaggy Cosplays, they were both there, and they're not from the New York area, and I was very, very excited to see them. It was my first time doing panels at New York Comic Con. That was super exciting, and I'm super honored to get to be a part of that. And I was a guest at an after party, which, if you know me, you know that I kind of am not a party person, but I had so much fun, and I did get a little lit, but I did have so much fun, and I can't wait to hopefully, as my platforms grow, be invited to more of them and do more things. I think it was super duper fun, and that's that. I did get ahead on some other like life things that were stressing me out a little bit. My voice is finally back. I'm recording this not early, but I'm recording this, and you can kind of hear that I can talk. I think that after work today, I might not have it anymore, but we'll see how it goes. I could not talk literally for the entirety of from Monday until Wednesday, or from Sunday until Saturday really until Wednesday. I could not talk, and I kept doing things and laughing, and like especially Saturday I was doing things and laughing and having fun. I met Hayden Christensen with a couple of my friends whom I love very, very much. Sidril X and Harem Scarum Cosplays and Agent Cosplays all went with me, and I love each of those people so much. Obviously, we're all big Star Wars nerds. Sid probably second to AJ, and AJ maybe second to me. Probably like the only person whose Star Wars obsession is almost on par with mine. Almost. But we all got to meet Hayden Christensen. That was really, really exciting. The picture's up on Instagram if you haven't seen it. It's also on Facebook. Obviously, I put it everywhere because why wouldn't I? I met Hayden freaking Christensen. He said that we looked awesome, and that's really cool. He was super duper sweet, and that was that. The line was really long. One complaint that I had with ReedPop is, so they do their meet and greets through another company. I forget the name of the company right now, but they do their meet and greets through another company, and they have you pick these slots to do times, and then you do the times. It tells you like when to get in line, blah, blah, blah. But the line is still first come, first serve. So that's a little annoying, especially when you consider the pricing for some of these celebrities. not a little annoying. A little annoying is a huge, gross understatement. It was very, very, very irritating. And had I not been so excited to meet Hayden, I probably would have been like super cranky. But I was with people that I cared about a whole lot, and I was still stoked by the end of the day. We met him. I had a helmet and did not face it the right way because I was so nervous. So that was fun. And everybody can see what a nerd I look like in the picture. But I digress. It was so much fun. And then we saw a couple of my friends get engaged at Comic Con. That was really exciting. They were cosplaying Luke and Mara and Jade. They've been all over the internet. So you've probably seen it, especially if you watch my stories or anything. You've definitely seen me share it because I just think that is the cutest thing. And I've seen Comic Con engagements before, but to cosplay Luke and Mara Jade Skywalker and then get engaged, that was just super cute. And they were really nice. I met them on Thursday and we hung out literally all weekend. And they live in Queens, which is super duper exciting for me. I'm just excited. This con was my first con since, the paparazzi. And I just think, you know, I was really anxious for a couple of different reasons I won't get into on the podcast. I was really, really anxious, and it ended up being one of my favorite cons I think I've gone to since the beginning. I've been going to cons, I can't do the math right now, but I've been going to cons since I was 12 years old. And this was very much a feeling of I'm like in the beginning you weren't really meeting your friends at cons because you were meeting new people at cons. But now I was meeting so many of my friends, or I was meeting up with so many of my old friends like that are local that I just didn't get to see over the last like 2 years. And then I was meeting new people and hanging out with them all weekend. And that was really exciting and something that I think a lot of people, especially in the cosplay scene with like how it's been, I think a lot of people kind of have been missing that because cosplay is so, and I'm sorry, I might take some pauses to drink some water, but cosplay is so ingrained in social media, or social media is so ingrained in cosplay right now that I think we kind of have been, you know, missing out on the most exciting part to me about cosplay, and that's like going to the cons and meeting people and seeing their cosplays and getting pictures with people even if it doesn't really make sense. I was Padme on Saturday. So Friday I was Black Cat and Adam Eve, and we'll talk about Friday. We will get into the spooky stuff too, but Friday I was Adam Eve and Black Cat. Adam Eve from Invincible, Black Cat from Spider-Man, Marvel. Thursday I was Daenerys Targaryen from season 8. Saturday I was Padme Amidala from Star Wars, and Sunday I ended up being Harley Quinn because I figured, you know, regretfully, I wore Harley Quinn when I wasn't really feeling the best because I had eaten kind of poorly all weekend and blah blah blah, but I still had so much fun as her, and she's still by far one of my favorite characters to cosplay as. But, and also it was a big deal for me body image wise to wear an outfit like that in public in a setting that was not just cosplayers, like a huge deal, just because I used to battle with body image, and wearing that in public is super exciting to me, and it was super duper fun, and I met some great people even just on Sunday. I got to see certain old coworkers that I didn't think I'd bump into at cons. I ended up on the news. I ended up in the news. I was in a panel with Heather Bodie, and well, by Heather Bodie. Heather Bodie planned the cost positivity panel. For those who know, I did apply for my own panel and I didn't get approved, and I was super duper heartbroken and hella discouraged, and it just so happened that Heather did get approved and she had asked me to be on her panel anyway. So it worked out that I still got to be in a panel, and I was actually in two panels. I was in the Crash into Cosplay panel by Dom Charland, and I was in the cost positivity panel, and both of those things super duper exciting. The Crash into Cosplay was kind of getting people started on cosplay, and like the panel was really really interactive, and so many people had so many great questions, and we were just talking about like things to think about when you're getting into the scene. And the cost positivity panel was about body image and cosplay and fitness and cosplay. And half the panel was just fitness professionals, half the panel was just cosplayers. And then there were a few of us that kind of do a little bit of both. Heather Bodie being one of my biggest fitness inspirations and cosplay inspirations because she cosplays She-Hulk and she's really, really good at it. Sorry for the really awkward pauses. I need to make sure that I drink water while I'm recording this because if I don't, I will lose my voice before work. Anyway, so the panels, one was really, really interactive. The other one was interactive, but the Crash into Cosplay one, we had so many questions from the audience and like everything that we were answering was kind of as we went. And I think that was a really unique approach. I think Dom did an amazing job. I think all of the panelists did an amazing job. I will be linking Dom and Heather's Instagrams in the information for this, just because I think you should follow them. They're really, really neat. They're amazing people. They're super motivational. Dom probably doesn't listen to the podcast. I wrote a sappy post about him already. Heather is going to be on the podcast in a later episode. Very, very excited to share that with you guys, just especially for those who missed the panel. We had a really, really early time slot. 11 a.m. on a Friday at a con is not the best time slot, but the people who came were attentive and they were involved and it was super fun. I got to come in and see my friends first thing in the morning and that was just amazing. This weekend was really unforgettable. The Crash in a Cosplay crew, like, I kept asking Dom over and over, are you sure you want me on your panel? Are you positive? Like, these people are legit and I don't know. And I've been cosplaying a long time and I guess I just don't ever feel up to the part. Come KatsuCon, I am doing my first major build, which I probably should start on considering it's October already, but I'm waiting to go to Spirit Halloween. I have an idea for how I'm going to do something. I just need to see if I can get it done. We'll see how it goes. I don't want to expose what it is. If you talk to me, you probably already know the idea, but we'll see if I can do it with a stop at Spirit Halloween so I don't have to do everything from scratch myself. I'm just a little bit worried about the weight of everything. I do think KatsuCon is the place to do this. KatsuCon is kind of where people bring their A game, and I'm anxious to see if I can get this build done, but really excited to see if I can get it done. And I have some other ideas that are really out of the box for me, and I just hope that I can do them justice and not have to con crunch because I've had 2 years to do them, but that's neither here nor there, you know what I mean? What else happened at Comic-Con? I got to get some pictures. I can't wait to share all of them with you guys. I really can't wait to share the Padme and Anakin pictures that my friend and I took because they are going to be chef's kiss. My good friend Jose took them. I've shot with Jose a lot of times, actually. I've shot with Jose a good amount of times. He's a super, super, super talented photographer. I will also put his information in the bio if you're interested. He does cosplay and some fashion photography. Amazing, amazing person. Super, super kind. One thing that was really weird to me this weekend was everybody kept talking about how good my energy was, and I don't know if it's imposter syndrome. I don't know if it's because I was anxious. I don't know what it was, but I did not know that so many people would compliment my vibe in general. Especially, I guess, I don't know, I get typecasted as like cosplay Raven, do this, do that, and I think I just look the part, but this con was a big deal for me because it was kind of my first con since the pandemic, and it was my first con on my own because obviously we didn't have cons for such a long time, and it was really, really like freeing and invigorating, and I really, really enjoyed myself. And I think that people finally got to see me in the cosplay community, which hasn't happened. Aside from Lightbenders, it hasn't really happened where my personality has got to show through in the New York cosplay scene. So that was really exciting for me. I was very proud of myself for like putting myself out there, and I forgot my business cards. We gotta make new business cards because the QR code on my other ones expired and I don't really feel like paying full price for it. So there's that. But, oh, and I also did get some prints and things. I didn't spend that much money, and I found like some bomb ramen spots. I'm thinking of making like a map, and I know other people kind of do this, but I'm thinking maybe before Anime NYC, like putting my favorite food spots around the convention center, just in case people like, I like to suggest places that are in budget. I like to suggest places that are good, and I like to suggest places you can either go to with a small group or you don't really need to wait a long time for reservations. So let me know if you like that idea. I'm still waiting to check on if we have some fan mail. We're going to do that in the next episode since we have a bonus episode for October and I kind of missed an episode. One of these episodes is going to be a little bit longer. So when we do the longer episode, if you have, what are we talking about? Why you like horror? What are your favorite horror genres? What's your favorite part about Halloween even or October? If you answer any of those questions, I would love to feature you and respond in the next podcast episode or the one after that. Maybe the last episode of October. I think that'd be a little fun. But I am on a Candyman shirt. I saw the Candyman remake. We talked about it when we did the 3x3. Why do I like horror? And why do some people like horror? So I have a book. I don't think you can see it, but it is back here. It is called The Philosophy of Horror. And what it is kind of, and it's not an anthology. That's not the word. And I know every episode so far I have tried to find a word. And you would think that I would be a walking thesaurus while doing a podcast, but I'm not. But I'm going to drink some water real quick. Maybe I'll cut that out. We'll see if I do. I guess it gets hard to drink water when you're doing a podcast by yourself. Anyway, I have a book that's called The Philosophy of Horror, and it's kind of like a compendium slash anthology. I forget the word, but it's a collection of actual scholarly essays and articles and studies on why people like certain aspects of horror. And what was interesting to me, I had started reading this for fun, and then I ended up writing a paper on it 2 semesters ago. I don't know. I ended up writing a paper on it in one of my literacy classes, and I realized like how much I really do love that genre and how many subgenres there are in it. And we were kind of talking about how like, and I ended up having to do other studies in addition to this one. Poe is over here. In case you guys hear any scuttling or anything, it's because Poe is at my feet. But it was just it was interesting because I did have to do additional research and not just pull from this book, but this book does have some amazing articles and amazing studies that were done on why people like horror and what kind of horror they like. And I think, all right. He almost made me grab his neck. Come here. I'll cut this out. Maybe I'll cut it out. Do you want to say hi to the people? I won't cut it out. Now you have to watch and subscribe on YouTube. But also I hope you're listening on Anchor or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. But subscribe on YouTube and you can see Poe jump out of my arms. He doesn't really like being held. Anyway, but he wants me to love him and I can't love him right now because I'm busy. Anyway, so a lot of what had happened in the book or in all of these articles is the general consensus of why certain people like certain aspects of horror. Obviously, this isn't like the end all be all. This isn't including, monster flicks and things like that and people who just like the cinema or people who just like the spectacle of certain things. This is about why like the psychology behind it. Now the book is called The Philosophy of Horror and it does go into it, but it opens with a lot of articles about why we enjoy it and it kind of has different reasonings. And I never fully know how to process philosophy things, but when it comes down to our brains, a lot of people who have undergone like trauma or something like that, and not everybody, take this with a grain of salt. I'm not like a professional or anything. I just did a lot of research. A lot of people who have undergone these things like horror because they like the control of horror. When you're watching a scary movie, you are aware that you're in this moment, and part of what brings us back to it over and over again is You're in this moment. Yes, you're scared and you kind of get to let go, but also you're in control because you could just turn it off. You could just leave if you want. A lot of people don't like horror for the same reason. Like they feel they have to finish the movie and they get scared. Could never be me. Some people like obviously have horror that they don't sit properly with. I don't know what that's like, but for me, that element of control is probably tied to some type of trauma. I don't know, but another reason is obviously like the adrenaline, and that's something you don't get in your everyday life. So it's fulfilling for us mentally to have that stimulation. Some people like the spectacle. I love gore movies, and we've talked about this. I love gore movies when gore movies are done right. Don't give me a Serbian film or a Human Centipede 2 and tell me that that's like good, because it's not good film. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's got gore, and even Saw to an extent, later editions of Saw get a little gratuitous in the gore that they have, but the core story to Saw and Spiral and the core elements of the first Saw movie, you kind of, especially if you're a long time Saw fan, you do get that curiosity as it goes on, and the story is actually still good in its core, even though the gore is what it is. You know what I mean? It's not just like some B grade, like whatever. And for me, I think that's why I got into it. So I did want to talk about, and I briefly touched on this in the last episode, but I got into horror really, really young. I can't pinpoint the first time I watched it, but my most vivid horror related memories are Nightmare on Elm Street, Child's Play, and Carrie. And I think my taste has changed since then. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of Candyman. I wish that he was in Dead by Daylight in general, but I think a lot of these elements from these classic horror films did stick, and I don't know if Child's Play is considered a classic the way that A Nightmare on Elm Street would be, but I kind of consider it a classic, and I really don't think, when we're talking about horror, a lot of people don't list Carrie as one of their favorite scary movies. I maybe there's a difference between a scary movie and a horror movie or a gore movie or whatever, but I kind of group them all together, especially because it is spooky season. You know what I mean? I just think that that's how it should go. But I digress. Anyway, I watched these when I was really, really young, and I thought the imagery was cool. Yeah, it scared me a lot. And then eventually I just like it. I'm getting ready to see Halloween Kills on Sunday, and I am so excited to go see it because the last Halloween movie that came out a couple years ago was really, really good. I like those movies. I don't really know why I'm so invested in those, but I'm going to read a little bit more of that book. I haven't finished it because I did have to pick a couple of articles from it and then go in and do my own research. But I would like to get into the philosophy of it all. I do think that a large chunk of the philosophy is we like to have control, but we also like the lack of control, and when things are like you want to break up the monotony of everything. Monotony of everything. You need to get away from the status quo, and I think horror is a really, really good way to do that. I think that in the same way that some people just can't fucking stand musicals, some people just can't stand horror because they're crybabies. But no tea, no shade. But for me, I love horror, and I love the filmmaking elements of horror movies. I think, as somebody who, and I know I keep saying, but as somebody who loves sound design and cinematography, I think there are key elements of horror. Like when you go back and think of Psycho, that was so groundbreaking for film and cinema at the time that it had came out, and the music was so jarring that it ended up getting repeated again and again and again in pop culture. You know what I mean? And I think things like that really do come from the horror genre, and they kind of solidify themselves. You think of like German expressionism with Nosferatu. I just came back from a really good workout. That's why I'm so blah, 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 blah. Anyway, you think of German Expressionism with Nosferatu, and you think of elements from that movie that then carried on to Gothic cinema and things that in film, obviously it came from literature, But and obviously Nosferatu was about Bram Stoker's Dracula, but they couldn't call it that. And blah 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 blah. If you didn't know that, that's what happened with Nosferatu, um, because whatever, that's how it works. But Nosferatu was based on Dracula. Obviously, we know this much. But German Expressionism at the time was so pivotal in film as Germany, during the World War, Germany was one of the only countries that was making film. And like we were making film, France is making maybe like 1/3 of the films that we were making, like triple the time that Germany was, but Germany was a solid creator of film at the time of Nazi Germany. And it sucks because I learned that recently and now I can't appreciate any of the movies that I used to appreciate. But I did also learn a lot of filmmakers left Germany and came here because they didn't like Nazis, which, nice. Good job for basic human decency and being correct, whatever. Anyway, you think of films like Nosferatu and what has come from Nosferatu and what imagery carries on from there. You think of the Dutch camera angle. You think of things like that. And these are things, if you're not a film buff, you might not know about the Dutch camera angle, but the Dutch camera angle is when it's like slightly ajar and it gives things this like elongated look, but also like your brain tells you, oh, this is off, like something is off about this. And that is from German Expressionism. But what I think is important is how frequently that exact use and technique of camera angles got carried on into other cinema moving forward. I think, they do it in regular films, obviously, but when you move on from horror, or like you're looking into horror, how many times do you see that jarring ass camera angle? You know what I mean? How many times do you hear nothing and like the absence of sound stresses you out more than if there were sound? Or when you can hear the main character just taking footsteps. That's terrifying in a lot of cases. Or even, now I forget what movie it is right now, but there was a movie that came out a couple of years ago and the girl would hear scratching, and like the scratching was such a key element of the movie, and then you find out that she like saw demons or something. I don't fucking know. I don't remember. But you think of these things, or like when there is a build up in music, or you think of that jarring moment in fucking Psycho when he's stabbing her in the shower, and you think of that. And eventually, yeah, we do get into soundtracks like that aren't original music. And I'll get into that in a second. You think of movies down the road, but when you think of key things, it's such small elements of film that you didn't consider in because you're watching it. You know what I mean? It's in passing. But these are things that even if you don't like horror and you do find yourself getting more into film, you can appreciate that a little bit more. And that's something that I love about watching scary movies, because it does tense me up. I'm already an anxious person. Why do I like horror when I'm already a fucking anxious mess? I don't know. But it's super fun, and I love that stimulus of the sound design and what's on the screen and like being stressed out at the same time. That's why jump scares kind of piss me off, and I think there was a brief time in horror where we were so reliant on jump scares. Even in horror games, we were so reliant on jump scares. You think of Five Nights at Freddy's, and a lot of people who love, especially people, because this was at the time that survival horror had its big dip. You think of, this was Five Nights at Freddy's came out at this a little bit on the tail end of when Resi 5 and Resi 6 were, doing what they were doing. And Silent Hill, I think Homecoming or Shattered Memories, or one of them was the last Shattered Memories was okay, but one of those was the last game to come out for Silent Hill, so the Silent Hill fandom was kind of like meh. I talk about Obscure, but you haven't seen Obscure even be mentioned when most people talk about horror or why they like horror. And I do think that the gaming industry has further skyrocketed my love for horror and scary things to the point where I'm thinking of games to play for stream, and I can't even think of things because I play fucking Dead by Daylight every day and I just like it so much. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not really a scary game. Also, if you're listening to this, Back for Blood did just drop. I can't buy it just yet, but I'm going to get it at some point and I will be streaming it. I stream Monday through Wednesdays, sometimes Sundays. Anyway, and sometimes Thursdays, sometimes. But definitely Monday through Wednesday. I did take a brief time off because I'm going through a lot. Anyway, these are all key things that you don't think of when you're watching a film, but I really, really appreciate. Also, like, even like color temperature in films. Like, if something is blue, you feel kind of cold and like alone. If something is red, it's like hot and like, it's very simple things. And I know I'm addressing a little bit more of the psychology aspects and less of the actual philosophy aspects, but I think both are equal parts as important. Now, when it comes to games, it's a little bit different because games, obviously, there is not the same elements of control, but as I was saying, at the time that all of these survival horror games were kind of falling off, we had the rise of Five Nights at Freddy's, and I can't really think of a way to kind of another way to kind of pinpoint what was going on in like the mainstream horror game scene as much as here's what's happening. Like these games are kind of falling off. Silent Hill was what it was up until PT, and then Resident Evil became like an action series because that's what was getting big, and we were kind of like, there were other horrors that were coming out. There was like, obscure every now and again, like people were still holding on to Left 4 Dead, but even then Left 4 Dead was definitely more of an actiony moment than and I love Left 4 Dead. I have a tattoo for Left 4 Dead. I'm very excited about Back 4 Blood, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, these things were a little bit more actiony, and to an extent horror movies kind of happen to be the same thing, and now we're finally back on this rise of what we like about horror, and I think that's super duper exciting. And I love playing horror games so much because for a long time I was like, there's no good movies coming out, so how can I get that itch, you know what I mean? And I think some people don't like reading because they move too slow, and it's a issue to what was happening in the scene at the time. But those are a couple of reasons for why I like horror and what got me into horror, and I think it would be an interesting conversation. So if you have anything to say in regards to this episode, please go on Anchor and respond, or go on Spotify and do the Q&A. There was also a Q&A from the last episode, which I will be responding to at the end of the month. So maybe we'll keep up with that. Maybe. Probably not, but we could. We'll see how it goes. But let me know why you like horror. I think it would be an interesting conversation, and I would love to talk to you guys about it, if you'd be so kind. But yeah, we already talked about the 3x3 last week. We already talked about some whys. As far as like people who think that other psychopaths like to watch horror, I don't really think that's the case, because the gauge for human morality is not the same. Oh, getting back to the soundtrack issue, or the soundtrack thing, there are movies that have more original soundtracks, and they are super duper driven by whatever the composer gives to them, because if you change the music in those movies, it changes the narrative entirely. But there are movies like Us, and those movies. Now, Us is most movies obviously have a mix of like a composed soundtrack, and then they have like other songs that they like got to license to get into the film. Us, I think, when I started talking, I was like, oh, they have a lot of songs that are like already existing, and they put them into the movie. Yes, and I do think they give it a pivotal cultural element, but they also have songs that are remixes of those licensed songs, and then they have songs that are completely composed just for the movie, which I think is just as important and valid to the story of Us. If you haven't seen Us, I will not spoil it, but what you do need to know is that NWA is in it at one point, and it's super duper funny, and the delivery of that could have not been at a better time, and obviously that is on the director and the producers to time stuff like that. But again, super pivotal to the story, and for anybody in Black culture who was watching it, they found the moment with the NWA song super funny, whereas it might have been lost upon white audiences. Even though white audiences obviously know who NWA is, it just hits different when you understand the cultural context of it and what was going on in the scene. And I just think that's really funny. But Similarly, too, do video games have the same thing? And obviously, I love sound design, and I think sound design, part of why, Resi fell off was that sound design, and then you come back with Resident 7 and 8, and those were amazing. Obviously, I'm still coming down from the high of 8, even though I played it, like, long time ago at this point, but sometimes there would be no music, and then sometimes you would hear like creaking, and in the very opening scene when you're in the village, you hear a thud from the other room in a building that you're in, and it scares you. And then later on, a lichen like comes back, and that's how you know what that thud was. You know what I mean? And those things are what stresses you out. And there are elements of these cinematic masterpieces that go into games, and the interactive aspect of it just makes it that much more rewarding to get to play. And that's why I like car games as much as I do, even though I scream like a little baby and I'm super obnoxious to watch. That's why I like playing them at the end of the day. If you haven't played Obscure, Obscure was an early 2000s game. There is Obscure Part 1 and 2, and apparently it is it has an occult following, which I didn't know, because I really felt like one of like 5 people that knew what that game was about. I played it with my friend on the weekend, and it was super cheesy, like the tropes, and they're college and high school kids, and it's super cheesy, very much kind of like Until Dawn, but Until Dawn felt very aware of its tropes, whereas Obscure was doing it unironically. If you haven't played it, it's really, really good. I think it's still aged kind of well, and I do think, similar to the issue that Silent Hill had when that got upgraded, I think that it does it a favor by being on an older generation console. When Silent Hill got moved, obviously a big part of Silent Hill's fog was how the game was rendered, and the fact that the PlayStation at the time could not render all of Silent Hill, so they said, here's this fog, you can't see in front of you. When it got the HD remake, that fog got taken away, and you just see emptiness, and it don't hit the same as what it used to be. So that element of the unknown gets taken away in the HD remake. And if you're playing something like Obscure, it reads very similarly because of that. So if you can get your hands on it or watch a Let's Play of it, you should do that. I highly recommend it. If you have a favorite, that's the other question we could do. If you have a favorite horror game that you like to play, I know a lot of people are really big into the Resi series, but whatever your favorite horror game is, let me know. I will put it in the Q&A on Spotify and on YouTube, and on Anchor. You can also comment on YouTube, and I will respond, but I would prefer if you do it on Anchor, just so I can hear your lovely voices talk back to me, and we can get these episodes a little bit more interactive, especially since I know nobody really wants to listen to me talk for 45 minutes. Unless you do, which I guess at this point, if I'm still going, you probably have. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I know I went a mile a minute. I know there was a lot of information going on. The vibes are really, really high right now in terms of content to put out and things like that, and getting my life together. And they're low in other aspects, but we're working on it. Streams will be coming back on Monday, and that's that. Midterm seasons, spooky season, let's get it done. I hope you guys live like legends. Have an amazing week. I will see you next time. I didn't introduce myself at the beginning of the episode, but if you've listened thus far, I am Legend of Anakin. I am your friendly local neighborhood gremlin, and I'm a nobody. But I love to talk to you, and I love being here and sharing all of this fun stuff with you. And I love spooky season. Have a great day. Have a great week. Blah, blah, blah. Bye, y'all.